Here with this week's hottest stories in the investment world, this is Zach's Friday Finish Line.
Hello and welcome to the Zach's Friday Finish Line. I'm Ryan McQueenie, a content writer here at Zach's, along with one of our editors, Maddie Johnson.
Today is Friday, September 1st. I can't believe it's September.
Yes, summer's over.
Oh my gosh. And we're here to recap this week's biggest stories from the investment and financial world. It's been quite an intense week in the U.S., just to say the least. And all over the world. Here in the States, the country has started its collective effort to rebuild Houston and the Texas Gulf Coast after the devastation left in the wake after Hurricane Harvey, now a tropical storm, perhaps now a tropical depression. I'm not really sure, but it's really kind of stalled in the area. The last I read about the storm, it had hit like southwest Louisiana. But in addition to Harvey, it looks like tensions with North Korea are heating up yet again.
Yeah, that's fun. I thought we got over that, the latest phase of that, but we're back talking about that this week. So yeah, as you said, kind of just been an intense week around the world. Also been a very busy week on Wall Street, especially in the consumer sector. We saw the first impact of Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods kind of play out over the last few days. And Maddie and I actually had the opportunity to visit a Whole Foods this week, and we'll be talking about the differences we noticed later in the show. But first, we wanted to get into a very special segment on this week's top story in the biotech industry.
Yeah, so in just a moment, we'll be joined by Brad Lonkar, the creator of the Lonkar Cancer Immunotherapy Index. Brad's index tracks the combined performance of several major companies that are developing therapies to treat cancer by harnessing the body's own immune system.
This makes Brad the perfect person to discuss this market's massive week, which included the announcement that biotech behemoth Gilead is acquiring Kite Pharma for a staggering $11.9 billion. Here's Brad to explain why this deal went down and help us recap the other recent news in this space. Thanks for joining us, Brad. Let's start with the story that broke at the beginning of this week, Gilead's $11.9 billion acquisition of Kite Pharma. This deal valued Kite, a developer of a certain type of CAR T cancer treatment, at $180 per share, a 29% premium to its closing price last Friday. Just to cover the basics here, what is a CAR T therapy and why did Gilead decide to shell out nearly $12 billion for Kite?
Yeah, so this is very exciting. So CAR T is what's called a cellular therapy. You know, normally when you think of a drug, you think of a pill or in the context of cancer, chemotherapy or radiation. And this is using the patient's own living cells to treat the disease. And what these companies are able to do is they draw a person's blood, and then they re-engineer the cell and program it and tell it what to look for in the body. In layman's terms, we like to say it's like attaching a GPS device to those cells, which are called T cells, which are the main attack cells of the immune system. And initially, this is working very well in certain types of blood cancers because blood cancers have a marker on the outside of them, a protein called CD19. And so what these companies are able to do is reprogram those T cells to look for CD19, and then they infuse them back into the patient, and that's exactly what they do. They look for CD19, they expand, and they kill it. And the amazing thing is, this is first being tested, sadly, in patients who have run out of all options and other treatments are no longer working for them. And for certain types of blood cancers, at least initially, they're seeing complete remission rates anywhere from a third to two-thirds of patients, depending on what type of blood cancer it is. So it's very promising, and this is a brand new technology that I think will be improved and made even better over time. So it's something to watch for sure.
Wow, those remission rates are truly incredible. And on Wednesday, another major headline in the CAR T market, the news that Novartis had received approval for its CAR T therapy to treat acute, please, if I butcher this word, please forgive me, lymphoblastic leukemia. Why was this such a major milestone for the CAR T market?
That's right. These terms always are hard to pronounce. You can just say pediatric ALL in this case. Which,
That's very much more simple.
Yeah, it's a type of leukemia. And this is important because that technology that I just described, CAR T, this is the first time that's ever been approved anywhere in the world. And whenever that happens, it's very exciting because we hope that pediatric ALL is just the very beginning of this. And it's such a unique way of treating cancer that there's nothing else like it. And so we're hoping that it's kind of a new era. And pediatric ALL, fortunately, is the cancer that this has worked best in. So Novartis, in their pivotal study that they used to ask for this approval, did a study of children that had untreatable leukemia. They had failed chemotherapy and it wasn't working for them anymore. And at 3 months, they had an 83% complete remission rate, and 79% of the children were alive after 1 year, which is just extraordinary considering how dire the situation is for this patient group and how urgently we need new treatment options. And so anytime the FDA approves a new technology for the first time, it's always meaningful. I think from an investment perspective, it usually signifies an inflection point, now that something has become real and investors see that the FDA has comfort with it. Usually you see a lot more investment and focus in that area, and I think that's the case here. So it's exciting for a lot of reasons.
Also, throughout this week, we've seen the share prices of other CAR T developers, such as Juno Therapeutics and Bluebird Bio, react to the Kite Pharma buyout and the Novartis approval. Why have investors targeted these two stocks in the wake of these recent stories?
Well, the first thing is when Gilead made this deal, they used a very bold word in their press release. They said they believe that these cellular therapies are going to be the cornerstone of treating cancer going forward. And that's a pretty bold thing to say because, as I've described, they actually only work in a couple of very small cancers. Like this pediatric ALL, there's only 600 patients in the entire United States. And so you have Gilead seeing that, spending almost $12 billion on a company and saying, we believe this is going to be the cornerstone of treatment, going forward. That's a very bold thing to say. And I actually agree with them, and I hope they're right. And so you're right. These other companies are benefiting because a lot of people are learning about this technology for the very first time. In biotech, we've known about it for years, but a lot of what we call generalist investors, people who don't focus exclusively on biotech, might be hearing about it for the first time. And when you have a company that's as credible and sophisticated and knowledgeable as Gilead saying this is the future, I think, as I said, this may be an inflection point for the investment scheme. So you have a lot of people trying to look for what other companies are in the space. And for sure, Novartis and Kite are kind of on a level of their own. They're the two leaders. Juno was right up there with them. Sadly, they had some troubles with some of their trials last year that set them back at least a year or two. So they're a year or two behind, but it's still a high-quality company. In fact, they have a big partnership with Celgene. And then Bluebird is working on this for a new type of cancer, multiple myeloma. So that's the type of cancer that Celgene has really made its existence on. And this CAR T approach seems to be, at least in these initial early studies, you always have to be careful because this is very early, but there seems to be some promising signs that this might be a useful technology for multiple myeloma, and Bluebird is the leader in that right now. They're the farthest in studies. So those are two great companies. Another one that doesn't get mentioned a lot that I think deserves a big mention is a French company called Cellectis. Symbol is CLLS. And that one is interesting because we're essentially, in layman's terms, in version 1.0 of CAR-T. And there's going to be version 2.0 and 3.0, hopefully, and that they'll be better. And without getting too deep and nerdy into the science, this company, Selectus, is the leader in what I consider version 2.0. And in this case, it hasn't been proven. They still need to do trials of their own, which have been starting up. But that's an interesting company, and they also have a partnership with Pfizer. And so I would watch that one in this space, too, because they have a chance to be a leader in this space a few years down the road if their version 2.0 of this turns out to work like we hope it will.
So, Brad, do you think this is the beginning of a new era for biotech investing, or do you think we're simply on track to meet the schedules investors have already been anticipating?
Well, so first of all, for full disclosure, you're talking to a biotech investor who's always always bullish. I just think that the technologies that we have right now just have so much potential, unlike anything I've ever seen before. Not only in this cancer space that we're talking about today, but for example, there's something that's called gene editing, and there's a sister technology, gene therapy, and there's so many different things. The nice thing is what we're talking about today for certain diseases is we're trying to cure diseases, unlike we have before. And the reason companies are able to do that is because the genetic basis of disease is understood just a whole lot better. And with these gene editing and gene therapy and some of these cancer technologies, the technologies allow you to essentially fix the genetic flaws, or at least target the therapy precisely towards them. And just like with those remission rates we're seeing with CAR-T, the difference between what's going on today in biotech, and you could argue what was happening 10 years ago, is we're not thinking incrementally. We're thinking about big leaps, and a lot of this stuff still needs to be proven, CAR-T included, even though it has its first approval. But just the ambition of what companies are trying to accomplish, because the technology might allow them to do that, is just totally different today than it's ever been before. And there's 4 or 5 technologies that are potentially game-changing platforms. So I think it's just a hugely exciting time to be involved in biotech. And I think biotech is going to have a great decade or two because the science is just so amazing.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us. And yes, it's very exciting to hear anything, I think, that has the potential to save as many lives as we're talking about here at such a high frequency is really encouraging. And obviously investors noticing now that there's plenty of money to be made in the space as well.
Definitely. And actually, I'll mention one last thing before we go. Biotech actually had a very rough year and a half, 2 years in the past. And a lot of that was due to the presidential campaign going on and just politics and all of the negative headlines that you had seen in the news about drug companies doing bad things. And a lot of that is being sorted out now, and I think that there will be reforms that kind of take care of the abuses but don't hurt the innovators, hopefully. And so that's another thing that's helped out a lot recently is just the overall environment has not been as dour as it was for the last couple of years. And now we're focusing again on the good news and the science and the improvements in medicine, which is what this industry is all about.
And no one likes cancer.
Yeah.
Like everyone hates cancer. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's putting this industry's best foot forward. The biotech industry exists to make new medicines that really matter for patients. And some companies had lost their way or kind of forgotten that over the last 4 or 5 years and had made money doing some artificial things that weren't right. And the reality is those companies were a minority, and there's a lot of good companies trying to innovate and do important things for patients. And fortunately, we're starting to see that in the news again. So it's nice that those dark clouds have parted a little bit, and we're hearing some good things.
From one monumental moment to another, we're going to transition over to a story that could be the start of a new era in grocery retail, Amazon's Whole Foods takeover. After the FTC approved the acquisition last week, we witnessed the first in-store changes this week, including markdowns on several of the chain's top-selling items.
Yeah, so on the reverse end, Whole Foods' $3.65 everyday value, which is usually what I buy when I'm in the store. Whole Foods Market, Whole Paws, and Whole Catch brands are now available on Amazon.com. But today, we actually wanted to talk about our own experience while visiting a Whole Foods this week.
Yeah, so we visited a nice little Whole Foods in Chicago's West Loop neighborhood. It's about, like a 10-minute walk from the office, something like that. It was a nice little lunch break. And you could definitely notice the changes. Maddie, I want to just bump this one over to you. What was your first reaction in the store?
Well, it still felt like a Whole Food. It's like a silly thing to say.
A drastic change.
Right. But you could tell it became more corporatized. Yeah. I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah.
It's going to become a word for this show.
Yeah. So the first thing that you see, literally, and I'm sure this was intentional, but the first thing that you see is a detailed sign for the people who are coming through our article on Zax.com. We'll attach some pictures for you. We snapped some photos while we were there. But you see a sign that literally
Be not
says...
so subtle about that either.
You see it literally, like a sign that literally says, like, we're making changes or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the Whole Foods plus Amazon logo. And you're like, okay, this is a lot.
But I'm like...
This does feel different, we've got Amazon.
I can afford to buy kale, organic kale now. I can get a crap ton of avocados.
Avocados were a good 20-30 cents each cheaper.
And that's like comparable to what Jewel markets them as. Mariano's, which, like we said before, is a local
grocery
Chicago
chain,
area chain. So it's like I'm really excited to actually go to Whole Foods now and get like my regular groceries for the week just to see what the difference is. Like meat in particular, I thought had some incredible deals going on.
Yes. Meat was one thing I noticed. I noticed milk was the $3.65 value brand milk was like significantly cheaper. I still think milk is a sham enterprise. That's a total ripoff, but I don't know. All
right. Dairy conspiracy theorist over here.
What else was marked out?
But speaking of milk, almond milk was on sale. I mean, the $3.65 everyday value almond milk. Was a really good value right now.
Yeah, and so and that's the thing that we noticed kind of right off the bat is, and I think that Amazon had released a full, like, down to the item list of everything that they were going to mark down. But one thing you can notice as you kind of look at the placement of the Amazon plus Whole Foods now discounted signs that they have everywhere that there is something that's cheaper is very obviously just the Whole Foods brand stuff right now. And it's because, they have the full price control on that. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, next steps, whether prices come down overall or if the only kind of option they'll have is with that Whole Foods branded stuff.
Or if like some weeks or they'll just be like weekly promotions on like some of their more popular specialty brands.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially when you get into like the really like bougie organic and natural brands.
Your gluten-free
and your
dairy-free or vegan.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
But I didn't notice any Echo stands. Did you?
No, not in
Farm
this
Fresh
store.
Echoes. I didn't notice any.
I saw a picture on Twitter though on Monday of Echoes being sold in a Whole Food store. So I think it was just a matter.
They are organic, if you were wondering.
But unfortunately, not one in the one we were at.
Well, they're probably coming.
Definitely, I would imagine.
there also are a ton of other Whole Foods in Chicago, so they may be
definitely
in one of those as well.
Yeah. Let us know if you visited a Whole Foods and noticed any echoes for sale. Amazon lockers are also coming to select Whole Foods.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll replace the Instacart coolers that we saw.
So I thought that was really interesting because Instacart almost now could be considered a competitor. In the sense that you would imagine a next step sometime here down the line is to get Amazon branded delivery coming out of all the stores, or at least the stores, that they have that capability of the space to do that. And so an interesting thing, and this is not something I've noticed in every Whole Foods, not to say that this is like particularly unique, but in this location we were at, the front of the store, they have a few refrigerators and shelves that are for Instacart deliveries. Instacart is kind of like the Uber of grocery deliveries. You as like a regular individual person can just sign up to deliver for Instacart. And while in some cases you actually have to do the shopping, it looked like this was already prepared deliveries that you just kind of swing by and pick up and then deliver, and it's like an at-home delivery system for fresh groceries. So, you would think that it's not necessarily a direct competitor, obviously, because, the Instacart's not doing anything with the actual product sales. They're just doing the kind of getting it from point A to point B. But you would think
it's kind of what Walmart is using Uber for, is like testing that Uber in certain markets for,
right? Or
Uber
even
for.
and even the kind of thing that I think we've seen Walmart and a couple other companies try out is that like our employees on the way home can just bring things,
packages.
and so they're testing that idea out. So I guess I don't think Instacart's necessarily a direct competitor of anyone here, but like I'm saying, you might get Amazon cracking down. We want to be the only people delivering.
And they already had a partnership with Whole Foods before Amazon bought them.
Right. So maybe it's a last remaining relic of the old Whole Foods.
And who knows if that will... Yeah, you're right. Like you said, who knows if that will stay?
Yeah.
And who knows who Instacart will partner with next, because that company is surely not going away.
Definitely.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was noticing more like displayed areas, I guess, of things on sale than before. And I don't know if it's just because I was paying more attention to sale things. But you know how we were walking down kind of like the main aisle near the registers, and it was just like nicely like towered things of like granola bars on sale, and then like the next aisle or like the next space was like something or other on sale, and it was just like more of that. I don't know if that is out of the ordinary, or
I would say I was noticing everything that was discounted so much more because most of it was that had that glaring Amazon plus Whole Foods logo on it. And that was, and
I will say it was a nice burnt orange. I was expecting like bright neon orange, but it was much more subtle than that.
Yes, it was
nice fall amber. Amber orange.
Amazon orange. It was really interesting. And then things we didn't notice that are still coming are going to be kind of more technical integration of Amazon Prime into Whole Foods. Is kind of as we were kind of speculating last week, it is going to become Whole Foods' customer rewards program. So Amazon,
so excited.
Yes. So Amazon Prime is going to be kind of first implemented into the point of sale systems, and then eventually Prime members are going to have special savings and in-store benefits. It's going to be the real deal. And that was not, obviously not something that you can turn around in a couple days, but will be a process. So maybe we'll have to go back to Whole Foods for another visit.
I know.
Once we get the Prime benefits in there. Anything else? I think that was all the observations I had.
Yeah.
It wasn't too much there yet.
More and outside sale signs too.
Yes,
bright yellow.
Although I think I mentioned this to you while we were there. Is I was shocked that there was nothing on the outside that explicitly said the Amazon. There was no Amazon sign on the outside. The on sale signs that were on the outside that were saying like newly discounted things didn't have the Amazon logo on them.
Yeah, it was just Whole Foods.
Which I guess maybe isn't that surprising that they didn't just like drop a banner down and say like, we got bought by Amazon. Like, come on in, everything's cheap now. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that's just not the case. But yeah, I was surprised that there was no mention on it.
But I bet this weekend it's gonna like all the Whole Foods are gonna be super busy.
Good weekend to have it start too.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend.
So yeah, with that, I guess that's a good way to end it. Is I hope everyone enjoys the holiday weekend. Stay safe, have fun with your family. Summer's officially over, so we'll be back to our depressed autumn state here soon. And as always,
but pumpkin spice, it's almost here.
Pumpkin spice is back soon. Just overall as a flavor, pumpkin spice is in.
It tastes like a Yankee Candle. By the way, I tasted it last year. I bought one.
A pumpkin Yankee Candle.
It tastes like a pumpkin spice Yankee Candle. Not that it's bad.
You're talking about specifically the Starbucks PSL, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I like that. I'm not necessarily a PSL fan from Starbucks, but I like overall a pumpkin flavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. Pumpkin spice lattes taste like what a Yankee Candle smells like.
Okay, so not
it's
a ringing endorsement. Not a ringing.
I'm just not a fan. I don't like sweet coffee in general.
Sleeper pick for pumpkin spice latte of the year. 7-Eleven has a really good pumpkin spice latte. Yeah, you would be surprised.
Interesting.
But it's much cheaper, as you could imagine.
Probably.
Anyway, as always, guys, if you think we missed anything or if you want us to cover a different story next week, feel free to shoot us an email at podcast@zax.com. You can also check out all of our other exclusive audio content at zax.com/podcasts. Remember to subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Zax Friday Finish Line.